The studio lights glowed with a soft golden warmth, washing over the stage as the audience erupted into applause. Sylvester Stallone stepped out from behind the curtain with a measured confidence that came only from decades in the spotlight. His walk was slower than it once was, but it carried weight, every step echoing a career built on grit, discipline, and survival against impossible odds. Kelly Clarkson rose from her chair, clapping enthusiastically, her smile wide and welcoming. She greeted him with a friendly hug, joking about how he still looked ready to jump into a training montage at any moment. The crowd laughed, instantly at ease. Stallone settled into his chair, nodding to the audience, soaking in the energy. For the first few minutes, the conversation flowed easily. Kelly asked about his daily routine, teasing him about how intense his workouts still were. Stallone laughed, his voice gravelly but warm, explaining that training wasn't about vanity anymore. It was about respect for himself and the characters he had brought to life. He spoke about discipline, about waking up early even when his body protested, about the mindset that had carried him from rejection to global fame. The audience listened closely, hanging on every word. Kelly shifted the conversation to his early struggles, and Stallone opened up about sleeping in bus stations, about selling his dog just to survive, about the loneliness that came before success. His honesty drew murmurs of admiration from the crowd. Kelly nodded empathetically, adding her own reflections about rejection in the music industry. For a moment, it felt less like a talk show and more like two artists connecting over shared scars. But then Kelly leaned slightly forward, glancing at her cue cards. Her tone remained casual, but there was a subtle change in her eyes. She mentioned a recent viral clip where Stallone had spoken about modern Hollywood, saying that films today lacked grit and that too many performances felt safe. She laughed lightly and asked if he thought the industry had gone soft. The question drew a mix of chuckles and curious murmurs from the audience. Stallone paused before answering. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. He explained that he wasn't attacking anyone personally, just expressing concern that risk-taking had been replaced by formulas. He talked about how some of the most powerful stories came from discomfort, from pushing boundaries rather than playing it safe. His voice was calm, controlled, almost reflective. The audience applauded, seemingly satisfied. Kelly nodded, but instead of moving on, she followed up. She joked that some younger actors might hear that and feel dismissed, as if their work didn't matter. Her tone was playful, but the question lingered a second too long. Stallone shifted in his seat. He clarified again, emphasizing that talent existed in every generation, but the system around them often discouraged bold choices. He stressed that criticism of the system wasn't criticism of individuals. The band remained silent, sensing the shift. The audience laughed softly, unsure whether they were supposed to. Kelly smiled, but there was an edge now, a host instinctively digging deeper. She suggested that when legends speak, their words carry extra weight, and asked whether he thought he should be more careful with how those comments were framed. The room grew quieter. Stallone leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. The movement was slow, deliberate. His expression hardened, not angry, but guarded. He said he had spent his life earning the right to speak honestly, and that honesty wasn't always comfortable. He added that he respected the new generation, but he wouldn't dilute his experiences to avoid uncomfortable conversations. A few audience members clapped, others stayed silent. Kelly laughed again, trying to lighten the moment, but her next comment landed heavier than intended. She remarked that honesty could sometimes sound like judgment, even when that wasn't the goal. The laughter this time was thin, scattered. Stallone's jaw tightened. He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, eyes fixed on Kelly. He said he wasn't there to judge anyone, but he also wasn't there to be cross-examined for sharing an opinion rooted in decades of work. The tension was now unmistakable. The warmth that had filled the studio minutes earlier had cooled, replaced by an uneasy stillness. Kelly sensed it and attempted to pivot, complimenting Stallone's legacy and influence. But the shift came too late. Stallone straightened up, his voice still controlled but firmer now. He spoke about respect, how conversations should allow room for disagreement without turning into a challenge of character. The audience held its breath. Some leaned forward in their seats, others glanced at one another. The cameras cut briefly to Kelly, who nodded, her smile fixed but strained. She responded that tough conversations were part of growth, especially in public spaces. Her words were measured, but they drew a clear line between them. Stallone exhaled slowly. The moment stretched, heavy and fragile, as if one more sentence could tip everything over. He glanced out at the audience, then back at Kelly. The easy banter from the beginning of the interview felt like it belonged to a different show entirely. The clash hadn't exploded yet, but the spark was there, quiet, glowing, and impossible to ignore.